Lesson 77, Consecutive Odd and Consecutive Even Integers, and Fraction and Decimal Word Problems. So let's begin with the first part, since this is a two-parter. 77A, this is consecutive odd and consecutive even integers. Remember, just a few lessons back, I think it was lesson 75, we went over consecutive integers, and we used a formula or a variable system such that the first integer was n, the second integer was n plus 1, and the third integer was n plus 2. So that given n, we could determine what the second and third integers were based on this format or these formulas. Now we're going to discuss odd and even integers. So on a number line, we see that, let's say this is 0. I'm going to go ahead and create a number line right quick for you. Say this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. Let's say that we want to find even integers, okay? That could be 2, that could be 4, that could be 6. Well, in order to get from 2 to 4, we can't add 1, we have to add 2. So when we're discussing even integers, we're going to say n is the first integer, and n plus 2 would be the second, because 2 plus 2 is 4. And then for our third integer, so this is the first, this is the second, for our third integer, we would say 2 plus 4, because to get from the first one, which is n, we'd have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's consistent wherever you happen to be on the number line. Now for odd integers, this is a little mind-blowing. Let's say we're looking for a first, a second, and a third integer. The first one, we're going to call it n, and let's say we choose -5, -3, and -1. Well, what we have to do to go from 5 to 3 is take 1, 2 steps. It's going to be every other. The same thing with even integers. It's every other. With odd integers, it's every other as well. So the second integer is going to be n plus 2 as well, because we take 2 steps and then 2 steps again. So n plus 4 to get to the third one, and so forth and so on. We have to skip 1 every time, and to do that, we add 2. So whether it's an even or an odd integer, we are going to set that up with n, n plus 2, n plus 4, and so on, adding 2 to our formula each time. Okay, is that clear? We have the 1, and then we have the 2, and then we have another 1 and another 2 for 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps. So 4 jumps. And same thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 jumps. Okay? All right, so that is how we are going to set up our problems for consecutive odd and consecutive even integers. We're just going to use 2, 4, 6, 8, and so forth and so on. All right, so let's do one of those problems. Let me switch back. Let's use black. We're going to do 77.1. All right, and 77.1 says to find 3 consecutive integers. So you want to set up your paper like this. You have your first, your second, and your third. Okay? Find 3 consecutive even integers. So that tells us we're going to skip. So that equals n, n plus 2, and n plus 3. We're going to skip. We're not going to have consecutive. We're going to have consecutive even. So it's going to skip over the odd ones. All right. Find 3 consecutive even integers such that the sum of the first and second, so So the first and second, that's n plus 2, equals the sum of the third and -10. Okay. Now if you wanted to, you could write that -10 like that, but it's just going to be the same thing as -10. So I just write -10. All right, so I'm going to read this again and let you follow along. Find 3 consecutive integers, consecutive even integers, such that the sum of the first and second equals the sum of the third and -10. All right, that looks right. So let's solve for these. So we're going to combine these, we're going to combine these. So this gives us 2n plus 2 equals n minus 6. So let's subtract n and subtract 2 from both sides. Cancels, that cancels. We have n equals -8. Very good. All right, -8. So our first n is -8. That means that n plus 2, -8 plus 2 is -6. Remember, this is a positive 2. Just because it's a negative, we don't change the rules and go backwards. We take care of this the way it is written. Now, n plus 4. Now, don't take this number and add 4 to it. Go all the way back to n. -8 plus 4 is going to be -4. So those are our integers that we are looking for. 8, -6, and -4. Now, if you want to check your answer, you may do so. And you just reread the question, and it says the sum of the first and the second. So -8 plus -6, which would just be -6, equals the third -10. -14 equals -14. So that is correct. All right. Moving on to 77.2. Find 3 consecutive odd integers. So 3, 1, 2, 3. And they're odd, so they're going to skip. So it's n plus 2, n plus 4. Such that the sum of the first and the third, the first is n, and the third is n plus 4. The sum of the first and the third is 7 greater, so plus 7. Then the second decreased by 18. Then the second, which is the second, is decreased by 18. Okay, and that's minus 18 is decreased by 18. So let's combine like terms. Okay, and we have this one and these two on this side. And 7 and 2 is positive 9. That's going to be a negative 9, I do believe. Yeah. So this will be n minus 9, and this is 2n plus 4. All right, now we can swim fish. Let's bring this over. Let's bring this over. This cancels, this cancels. We're left with n equals negative 13. And look at that, it's odd. So let's fill in our answers up here. N is negative 13. N plus 2 is negative 11. And n plus 4 is negative 9. And that's our answers. Okay. Now, whenever you type in your answer into your GenoPod, you're going to want to write it like this: -13, -11, -9. Just separate with a comma and a space, okay? Comma and a space, and then type the next number. Comma and a space, and then type the next number. All right, that way I can clearly understand the answer, and the system will be able to recognize that there's a separation between these numbers. Don't forget the space. All right, 77.3. Find 4 consecutive odd integers. 4. So first, second, third, and fourth. So that would be n plus 2, n plus 4, and n plus 6. Okay? Let's move on. Find 4 consecutive odd integers such that the sum of the first and the fourth, so the first and the fourth, so n plus 6, that's the first and the fourth, is, that's the equal sign, 25 greater, so it's a positive 25, than the opposite of the third. Okay, now if we say this, that's the third one, that does not give us the opposite of the third. That gives us the opposite of the first term in the third formula. So we have to put parentheses around the entire third term, okay, or the formula for the third term. And that negative sign in front gives us the opposite of the third term. Okay, so do not forget about your parentheses. Your parentheses serve a purpose, and it's to enclose everything that needs to be adjusted by this. Okay, so now let's go ahead and combine and do our distribution. So we have 2n plus 6, and we're going to say 25. Well, let's go ahead and make this negative n, and we have a positive 25, and this is going to be a negative 4, so it's going to be a positive 21. Okay, so this was negative n, and this becomes a negative 4 right here. And so we combined negative 4 and positive 25 into positive 21. So now we can swim our fish. Let's bring him over. Let's get rid of him. This cancels, so that's 3n equals 21 minus 6 is going to be 15. So divide both sides by 3, n is equal to 5. Okay, so n is, the first term is 5, second term is 7, third term is 9, and the fourth term is 11. Those are your answers. Very good. All right. Yes, that is correct. Awesome. All right, so let's move on to 77b. That wasn't so painful, was it? Not really. All right, 77b. This is fraction and decimal word problems. We've done these before. And we used, excuse me, I swallowed them away. We've drawn the diagrams for these before. I do not need you to continue drawing diagrams for these. All I need is the answer. You do not have to draw a diagram for my answers. I think that's a little bit of overkill on the part of the book. I think that's it's just unnecessary. Our first problem, 77.4, says that Lopez used a 5-iron, but the ball covered only 4/5 of the required distance. If she, that's Lopez, hit the ball 112 yards, what was the required distance? Okay, so she hit the ball and it went 4/5 of the required distance. We don't know what the required distance is, but we do know that the 4/5 was 112 yards, right? That's how you set that up. 4/5 equals 112, right? The fourth part that she hit was 112 yards, or the 4 out of 5 parts. Now we have to figure out the total. The total is, remember, the total is always the denominator. The denominator is the total number of parts in your fraction. So that's what we need to put here. And the way we're going to find that is through cross multiplication. We're going to say 4 times x is 4x. And it doesn't matter which side you put this on. And 5 times 12 I've got to figure it out myself. It doesn't tell me. 5 times 112 is 560. Okay, so 560 is what has to be divided by 4. We divide both sides by 4. X equals 560 divided by 4, 140. So 4/5 of 140 yards is 112. This is the answer that I want you to type in. I want you to type into the system 140. That's what, on these types of problems, type in 140. That's all I'm asking for. I don't even need the unit of measure on these. Okay? All right, let's move on. Let's do 77.5. Maccabee guessed that the total was 30.24. Okay, let's write that down. That's an important number. He guessed that the total was 30.24. But this was 7.2 times the actual total. So what is the actual total? So here's how we set that up in a cross multiplication. We know, all right, this is 7.2 times. So if we take 7.2 and turn it into a percent, we know that anything in front of the decimal goes in the hundreds place. So that's 720%, right? So that's going to translate into 720 over 100. And we know that 30.24 equaled 7.2 times. So 30.24 equaled 720%. So we put the 30.24 in the 720 section. It's equal to the 720. We don't know what the actual number was. So this is where we put our x. Now we cross multiply. 720x equals, and when we multiply times 100, we just move our decimal place back 2 places, so 3024. Then we divide both sides by 720. Let me pull out my trusty calculator. 3024 divided by 720 equals 4.2. So x equals 4.2. So the total was 4.2. That's what x was. So we know it was 7.2 times. Here's how you can check your answer. It was 7.2 times 4.2. So you just multiply 4.2 times 7.2 and see what your answer is. We're going to do that. We're going to say 4.2 times 7.2 equals 30.24. That's what it comes out to. So when you type in your answer, I just want to see that. Okay? All right then. Moving on, 77.6. All right, 3/4 of the tickets had been sold. There were 420 tickets left. 420 tickets remaining. Okay? How many tickets were printed? That's the total. All right, so we have to do a little bit of tricky math here. So we sold 3/4 the tickets. So what's left is 1/4 of the tickets. Do you see? So we had some number, X, and then we had, that was printed, and we sold off 3/4 of that number, right? So what's left is 1/4. So we're going to say 1/4 is equal to 420 over X. Just because it gives you a fraction in your word problem, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the fraction you use for your problem. You have to think about it logically. So that's what we're doing here. We're saying, all right, this is not 3/4 of the tickets. This is 1/4 of the tickets because 3/4 are gone. And this is all that's left. So this is why we use 1/4 to set up this problem. Right? So let's do the cross multiplication. We have 1 times X equals X. And 4 times 420, let's see, that'd be, my calculator keeps bumping. 1680 or 1,680. So the total number of tickets was 1,680. Now the other way that you could get there, we know that this 3/4 were gone and 1/4 was left. So an easier way to get there could have been to say, okay, well, if this is 1/4, we'll just multiply this by 4, and that'll be our total. Which is kind of what we did. We just did it in a more of a formatted, structured way. All right. So when you type in the answer, this is the answer I want. No more of those stinking diagrams. All right, and that's all for lesson 77. I will see you in lesson 78.